San Francisco, and this is Bloomberg Technology. Coming up in the next hour, the crypto crunch. Digital currencies have taken a $640 billion hit since January, and trading volume is falling. We ask, where is the crypto roller coaster heading next? Plus, the countdown to the next iPhone refresh will preview Wednesday's big launch. And President Trump is expected to roll back methane protections, one of the most potent greenhouse gases, just as California lays down the challenge for 100% clean power by 2045. First to our top story, $640 billion. That is how much cryptocurrencies have lost in value since January. And the bad news hasn't stopped there. Trading volume on crypto exchanges has plummeted nearly 80% in the same time frame. The result? Some of the biggest crypto exchanges are turning to unorthodox practices to boost activity and win market share. Here to discuss, we've got BitPay Chief Commercial Officer Sunny Singh, and in New York, the co-host of Bloomberg's What'd You Miss, Joe Weisenthal. So, Joe, I know this is something you follow very closely. It's not just the value, it's the trading volume. Is this the bottom?
I have no idea whether it's the bottom or not. But yes, absolutely. With the price collapse, that causes an interest collapse, that causes a volume collapse, and of course that's bad news for the exchanges. We saw a small round of layoffs, I think it was last week, at the popular crypto exchange Kraken, but we haven't really seen that much more. We haven't seen a sort of like exodus from the industry yet, and so if we were to look at past historical bubbles, we might expect to see more of that if there were a bottom. On the other hand, we could bounce back immediately if the believers are correct, and then we wouldn't see that.
Somebody who is not exiting the industry, Sunny Singh, sitting with me right here now from BitPay. Do you think this is the bottom, or is that still to come?
It's hard to say. I think right now the market's looking for some defining moment, a catalyst. And right now you're just seeing rumors that someone might do something, someone might launch a trading desk, someone might not be launching a trading desk. But I think next year you're going to see the big entrants become real, where you see Goldman does launch a trading desk, Fidelity does launch a Bitcoin product, Square offers Bitcoin processing for merchants, BlackRock launches an ETF. So all that will then become real, and then you'll see some adoption, actually, and then you'll see the price start bouncing back up again. Until then, I think you're being up and down on rumors, and who knows what to say when this also happen.
Joe, let's talk about some of these unorthodox practices we're seeing to boost activity. What are you seeing that's most concerning?
Well, you know, it's interesting going back to the run-up, because one of the key things here is that liquidity is really what breathes life into these coins. It's unlike, say, stocks, where everyone just goes on to their regular online brokerage account and buys whatever stocks they want. Coin trading is diffused across multiple platforms. Some platforms offer just access to a few coins, some offer many. But if a coin isn't offered in a wide variety of places, then, of course, that really harms the potential of the coin to appreciate. And so during the run-up, what you saw is the big exchanges had an incredible ability to sort of milk value out of the coins that wanted to list. So if you looked at one of the popular exchanges, Binance, then they could charge a lot for the various small coins to list, because that's where the money was. On the way down, the exchanges try to use these coins and saying, okay, you can list on there, but you got to encourage people to sign up and get trading. And so what you see is the balance of power shifting with the volume decline. It's not just that the exchanges can say, no, 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 you can't list unless you pay us. They really are trying to drum up attention and trying to get people on the site to get volume. It's it's very different than what we saw last December.
So, Sunny, no question there's some stuff out there happening that could give the industry a bad name. I mean, are you worried that could, pull the bottom out?
Yeah, and so that's always been the concern about the ICOs and the trading exchanges and the ICO industries that aren't quite regulated. And last year, getting your ICO token listed on a Binance or Bittrex could increase your market valuation, $100 to $1 billion, actually. We saw run-ups go up when you get listed on Binance of 5 to 10x in price, actually. So that was very powerful, and Joe's absolutely right. Liquidity is the key to these ICOs. And now I think when you're seeing the Bitcoin price drop, ICOs are no longer in favor anyways. They're down 95%. So people aren't really trading ICOs as much anymore. People are still trading a lot of Bitcoin and the other stuff, actually, not as much as they were 6 months ago. But what you're seeing is that until Bitcoin and the other large ones get up to 10,000 or get back some of the gains, the ICO market's going to be in a lot of trouble, actually. And a lot of those ICOs will never make it back to where they were 8 months ago.
Meantime, Joe, India has virtually banned cryptocurrency. You've got the courts there refusing to reverse a ban from the central bank. This is one of the largest democratic governments in the world that you think might be open or more open to something like this. What are the implications of this on a global scale?
Well, it's funny because people in the industry obviously aren't crazy about it when regulators come and crack down and limit the ability of trading and transacting and so forth. But then on the other hand, if you look at the sort of ideology and ethos of crypto, a lot of it is about decentralization, disrupting the dominant role that central banks have in money creation, circumventing the existing banking system. So from my perspective, I would be more concerned if I were in the space if governments weren't reacting negatively, because that would imply that the sort of goal of the whole space is being unfulfilled. So I think a big part of crypto is a threat to the existing system. And the fact that you do see existing regulators and players push back is kind of, in a weird way, a validation of the whole point. Now, it's not great for money, because if you want liquidity and money to easily pour in, then it's a problem when governments say banks can't finance this stuff or exchanges can't operate. But it does kind of fulfill what I think is the crypto narrative.
So, Sonny, it's not just India, of course. Russia,
Yep.
China, also virtually against cryptocurrency. Can this industry really take off globally if you've got 3 major governments in the world saying no?
Yeah, and it's actually those are the last remaining 3, I would say. And China and Russia,
they're big ones.
They're big ones. And China, Russia, and India have always been against Bitcoin. And India takes a different stance. They're not against it the way China and Russia really are, actually. India's saying we need to analyze it more. And I think in the next year or so, you will see India open up to that. China and Russia are the big wild cards. They have a different kind of government system, actually, than India does. Who knows when they're going to do it? And China controls a lot of the Bitcoin market, even still today, actually. So they are very much more powerful than India as far as the Bitcoin market share around the world.
Joe, was that a skeptical I heard from you there?
No, I thought that was an interesting point, and that it is a good idea to not lump all of these in together. One last point I want to get across about whether we're at some sort of bottom yet is if you just look at some of the market caps of some really dodgy coins. There are coins where the white paper was plagiarized. There are coins that have 0 prospects of ever being used. Some of these are still enormous. Just look at billion-dollar market caps of projects that aren't anywhere close to having anything. It makes it hard to believe that this is it, because for all the declines that we've seen so far, it is kind of amazing how many believers some of these things still have.
So, Sadi, you've got an opinion there. There could be further to fall. And to the point of the dodginess, what kind of impact are you seeing on your business at BitPay?
Yeah, at BitPay and people I talk to in the industry, we've never been more bullish, actually. So I see right now.
Business.
Yeah, business is great.
Going gangbusters.
We're hiring
is
more.
It getting better?
We're hiring more people. We're working with several global large brands around the world. No one's stopping their implementations. Everyone's going full speed ahead. Where I think the issue is again in the altcoins. Those will never come back, I believe, the same way a Bitcoin will come back. Fidelity, BlackRock, they're not launching altcoin products. They're going to launch Bitcoin products. So Bitcoin will rebound next year when all these products become mainstream adopted. And we're seeing no slowdown at all at BitPay. Our merchants are seeing great growth still every week. They're signing up more and more all the time. We're hiring more salespeople. You saw Coinbase is doubling their teams soon too as well. So it's still full speed ahead in the Bitcoin space. I can't guarantee what's going to happen in the altcoin world. As Joe said, there's a lot of dodgy ones that are out there that are still overvalued. They can go a lot farther down. Who knows what's going to happen to them? But Bitcoin, again, is the leader in this space.
All right, Sunny Singh, CCO of BitPay, and Joe Weisenthal. What'd you miss, Joe? I know you'll continue to follow the dodginess for us tweet by tweet. Well, one of the biggest Tesla bulls on Wall Street has given in. Rohit Shah of Nomura Internet downgraded the company from buy to neutral in a note titled, "No longer investable." Shah slashed his price target on Tesla from $400 to $300, citing what he called the erratic behavior of CEO Elon Musk. But Elon Musk's top SpaceX deputy hasn't lost faith in his leadership. SpaceX's president and chief operating officer Gwen Shotwell says the mania over Musk's antics is getting out of hand, calling him a brilliant man. Speaking at a satellite industry conference in Paris on Tuesday, Shotwell went on to say that her boss is as lucid and capable as he has ever been. Coming up, we are counting down to the next step in the iPhone's evolution with Apple's big reveal on Wednesday. We'll break it all down next. And if you like Bloomberg News, check us out on the radio, listen on the Bloomberg app, Bloomberg.com, and in the U.S. on SiriusXM. This is Bloomberg. Microsoft is making a large investment north of the border. It is planning to create a new Canadian headquarters located in downtown Toronto. The 132,000 square foot building is now under construction and part of a $570 million investment there over the next 3 years. The move is expected to come with increased staff and bolster its AI research lab in Montreal. Well, we are less than a day away now from Apple's next big product announcement from the Steve Jobs Theater in Cupertino. Bloomberg Tech's Mark Gurman takes a look at what we are expecting from the next update to the flagship iPhone.
There's no disputing the hype that surrounds an Apple product launch. And last year, anticipation reached a fever pitch as Tim Cook stepped onto the stage at the Steve Jobs Theater to unveil the iPhone X.
iPhone 10. It is the biggest leap forward since the original iPhone.
It was touted as the most significant upgrade in the iPhone's 10-year history.
The incredible new design, Face ID, true depth camera system, and more powerful technologies than we've ever put in an iPhone before.
So, how will this year's event compete? Well, the iPhone X is here to stay, mostly. We expect 3 new models that will look and act like the iPhone from last year. The first will be the iPhone XS, and it'll come with a faster processor and upgraded camera. There will also be a large screen version of that iPhone that is expected to come with the name iPhone XS Max. And then there's a low-cost version. It'll be a little bit bigger than the iPhone XS, but have a cheaper LCD screen instead of OLED. While the phones are significant to Apple's bottom line, don't expect to see any major breakthrough features. Those will come next year. But Apple hopes that these new phones will appeal to a greater array of consumers and in turn boost sales of accessories and services like streaming music and video and get the company a step closer to becoming the first publicly traded $2 trillion company.
Bloomberg Tech's Mark Gurman reporting there. While the focus on Wednesday will be Apple's hardware, the company is also continuing its push into content. Its video division has inked 2 new deals for feature films as it makes inroads to the movie industry. Bloomberg's entertainment reporter Anusha Sakui joins us now from LA. And Anusha, you're reporting Apple's bought the rights to 2 different movies, an animated film and a documentary. What can you tell us?
So we know that Apple has been doing a lot on the TV side, and in fact this week they won their first Primetime Emmy for original content, so already reaching a high bar there. But these are the first films that Apple has bought that are not music documentaries, as they have bought a few of those. So as we brought to you in June, Apple was in talks with an Academy nominated animator called Cartoon Saloon out in Ireland, and just in the past 24 hours, it's been confirmed that Apple has bought this animation called Wolf Walkers, which is about a little girl and a discovery of wolves and some old philosophies about how wolves were meant to be evil, but surprisingly enough, turns out they're not. So that's still in the making, and they've also bought a documentary about elephants called The Elephant Queen, which premiered in Toronto this weekend. So they're clearly heading for quite a high level of content in terms of film, and these are the first ones that we know of.
Now, still, Apple is really coming from behind here in the content business. They've been making much more progress on the TV side than the film side. But what do these latest steps mean for Apple in the bigger picture?
Well, that's what Hollywood has been asking for a while now. Is what is Apple's strategy? What are they trying to do? We've sort of been hearing whispers here and there, and we know these two films are at least family films, so that gives us some idea of the content. There's, potentially they could move into dramas. We know they had a lot of money to spend, and we know there are potentially other films that they could have been working on and bought deals for. So, but what it does tell us is that they've got it's a very high pedigree of filmmaking that they're interested in. These are both Oscar nominated producers and directors. So that tells us something. But as you said, they've got a lot to catch up with, the likes of Netflix and, the main Hollywood studios who spend billions on content every year.
From the Hollywood vantage point, is it possible for Apple to catch up at this point? They are Apple, but of course, Netflix has been spending billions and billions of dollars.
Yeah, but Netflix doesn't have, it has a huge amount of content on its platform, but if you look at in terms of film, it's really actually only this year that it might be in the running for something like a Best Picture Oscar, which, may seem superficial, but it really is kind of recognition from Hollywood that, you are a force to be considered with when it comes to having the best filmmakers. And, they've been in Toronto really, and some other festivals, Netflix, this is, wowing critics with films like Roma, which is Alfonso Cuarón, who made Gravity, that won Oscars. So they are only just starting really on the film side to deliver something that people think is a force to be reckoned with. Can they catch up? It's a huge amount that they have to start producing, but we don't know everything that they're doing, and we don't know exactly how much they're spending. They clearly have the cash, but yeah, it's going to take a big step up in commitment if they're going to go beyond the $1 billion or so that they supposedly had to spend over the past year.
All right, our Bloomberg Entertainment reporter Anusha Sakui from LA. Anusha, as always, thanks so much for stopping by. And of course, we will be live from Cupertino on Wednesday as Apple holds its latest event at the Steve Jobs Theater. You can join our special coverage on Bloomberg Technology, 1 p.m. Eastern, 10 a.m. Pacific. We will bring you all the announcements as they happen. I will be on the ground. And then at 5 p.m., we will have analysis and insights from our Bloomberg Tech team and experts on Apple's latest products. And just ahead, Alibaba's new Russian expansion. Jackpot's $2 billion deal with a local online marketplace. And Bloomberg Tech is live streaming on Twitter. Check us out at Technology, and be sure to follow our global breaking news network, TikTok, on Twitter. This is Bloomberg. Sonos shares plunged on the wireless speaker maker's first earnings report as a public company as it revealed its new lower-end products are eroding profit margins. Consumers have flocked to the wireless speaker maker's $199 Sonos One at the expense of the premium Play-based product, which retails for $699. Unit sales are up, but revenue down for the year. Morgan Stanley expressed disappointment with the company's visibility on new products like the Beam soundbar, noting it's waiting for proof the company can meaningfully diversify its revenue drivers. And the world's second largest supplier of semiconductors used in cars is now looking beyond the automotive sector. Japan's Renesas Electronics plans to buy integrated device technology for about $6.7 billion. The California company will help Renesas expand into data centers and communications devices. Renesas says it'll seek $6 billion in new loans to finance the deal, but has no plans to conduct equity financing. And Alibaba is setting up a $2 billion joint venture with Russian billionaire Alisher Usmanov's internet services firm Mail.ru. The deal will see the online marketplaces of the two companies merged in Russia and is backed by the Kremlin through the Russia Direct Investment Fund. Alibaba will fold its Russian operations, including AliExpress and Tmall, into this venture, while Mail.ru will fold in its Pandal marketplace into the new company as well. That Alibaba deal was signed on the sidelines of the Eastern Economic Forum in Vladivostok. Bloomberg's Anne-Marie Hordern spoke to Russian Direct Investment Fund CEO Kirill Dmitriev about why Alibaba chose Russia for expansion.
they already have quite significant business here. So they transact several $billion a year in volume. It's growing 50 to 70% a year. So it's a very fast-growing business. And Russia is a very promising market, not only for e-commerce, but for cloud computing, for artificial intelligence. So it's a natural partner for somebody like Alibaba.
So in the press conference, you were talking about how, and also Mr. Evans was talking about how Jack Ma himself was involved in this deal. Can you take me a bit through that?
Yeah, so we've been working on it for about 2 years. And for us, it was very important that when we had a very good discussion with Jack Ma, we really appreciated his passion. And his passion is really about transferring some of the know-how and knowledge into Russia and seeing the great opportunities that exist in Russia for small, medium business, for young people. So we really clicked on this passion to, deliver value to Russian consumers. And then we worked through lots of details, because for foreign businesses, it's very important to have data in Russia, and we worked on lots of details. And Mr. Evans touched on this, that it's not just, grand idea and that's it. We worked through lots of details about localization, about synergies, about having Russian payment systems, etc. So it took quite some time, but we have a very solid foundation now, and I believe that current Alibaba business will grow 10 times and more in the next 5-7 years.
You were just in meetings with President Vladimir Putin. Does he have a good relationship with Jack Ma?
Well, he commented that he doesn't believe that Jack Ma should retire because he's so young, and we laughed about this. And he appreciates what Jack Ma is doing. And I think Jack Ma's passion in education field and other fields that he will pursue later on is felt and shared. And when Jack Ma finished his presentation and his ideas, and there were other investors in the room, everybody clapped to him. And he, frankly, was the only sort of speaker who got an innovation. So we have a great relationship. We appreciate that he cares about Russia, and we'll build on this.
Russian direct investment fund CEO Kirill Dmitriev there with Bloomberg's Anne-Marie Horton. Coming up, California's Clean Power Pledge. While the Trump administration wants to roll back more environmental protections, California is going in the opposite direction. That is next. Plus, entrepreneurship is booming. More people are taking the risky leap of starting a business. And Silicon Valley tech veteran Maynard Webb's new book could help them. This is Bloomberg. This is Bloomberg Technology. I'm Emily Chang in San Francisco. This week, President Trump is expected to roll back protections on one of the most potent greenhouse gases, methane. In contrast, on Monday, California Governor Jerry Brown signed a measure aiming to get the state using 100% clean power by 2045. California joins Hawaii as the second state in the nation to set a goal of eliminating the use of fossil fuels. Decarbonization of the energy supply is no small feat, of course, but one that scientists say all states and nations must do as quickly as possible to stave off the worst impacts of climate change. Joining us now from Washington, Bloomberg New Energy Finance policy analyst and editor, Stephen Monroe. So first of all, Stephen, can California do this?
Well, the answer is that they've got a couple of things in their favor. It's 27 years between now and 2045, and the cost of storage, energy storage or battery storage, which would be a major means of carrying this out, is continuing to fall. We see it down 40% between now and 2025, and have every reason to think it's going to keep falling after that.
So what is it that's going to help California do this? We are seeing the economics of clean energy, of solar and wind, get better.
The economics are getting much better, and California draws from a very, very long extension cord, if you will. In addition to the power that it generates in state, California acquires electricity from Canada, Mexico, and most of the states in between. So the pool is very broad. The renewable resources, especially for wind and solar, are very attractive. And as we know, California is an innovative place.
So do we need new technology, or has that technology been developed already?
we always need new technology for meeting goals like this. And of course, it's impossible to predict what the exact outlines of the technology might look like. But between now and 2030, when some of the interim mandates start to kick in of this new law, it's very likely that we'll see step changes in the technology development in solar power, as well as in battery storage, which are two very important tools to get there.
And yet we're continuing to see the administration roll back clean power-related protections. You know, how difficult is this going to be to do state by state without the support of the administration?
Well, the fact is that in the present environment, the present political environment, if it's going to be done in the U.S., it's going to have to be done state by state. Now, the opportunity exists, and several states are looking into forming consortia whereby they could more or less join forces, not just on the goals and mandates, but also on the means of getting there. But barring some change in policy orientation by the present president, it seems like the state-by-state approach is what we're looking at for the foreseeable future.
And can they afford it? How much will it cost to get to 100% clean power for California, for example?
Well, we don't have a number for that. We are endeavoring to arrive at one, but there are many, many variables that are going to have some direct impact, including such things as the mix of generation that's going to actually eventually be the one used. And, of course, there are the ongoing cost declines in the technologies, and there are wild cards like tariffs and international exchange and foreign exchange as well.
2045 seems so close yet so far. Is it close enough to stave off the worst effects of climate change?
Well, there's an emerging consensus in the climate sector that globally we haven't done enough to prevent the 2% Celsius temperature gain that was the goal of the original climate accords. So what that means is we've dug ourselves a little bit of a deeper hole, globally speaking. In order to have significant effect on the emissions-caused aspects of climate change, it's safe to say that a tremendous amount of investment is required, as well as new commitments and large commitments by those who have already made them.
And look, let's just take this one example of rolling back these methane protections. How much can that set us back?
Well, methane by itself is a very, very potent greenhouse gas. And we have to see what the administration's proposal is in that regard. If it involves releasing methane, raw methane, into the atmosphere, then we're looking at like I said, a very potent climate change enhancer. On the other hand, if the methane can be burned off on site, as is practiced in many parts of the country, then it becomes another form of carbon dioxide pollution, which is also something that requires control, but not nearly to the extent that methane does.
Now, meantime, we've got the Global Climate Action Summit happening this week in California. This is a gathering of leaders from government, CEOs, and members of the private sector and nonprofits getting together to talk about what they are doing despite the messaging from the administration. What are you expecting to happen at this summit this week?
Well, there's a couple of things that I think are highly possible. One would be some sort of enhanced commitments and announcements by policy-oriented participants at the event. In other words, players that have existing commitments with regard to emissions reductions or technology investments, stepping those up a bit. The second one would have to do with policymakers themselves embracing some new forms of policy incentives, whether they be tax credits or carbon taxation. Either of these things seem like distinct possibilities at an event like this.
All right, Stephen Monroe with Bloomberg New Energy Finance with us. Thank you so much. Later this week, Bloomberg Television will be speaking with California Governor Jerry Brown from the Global Climate Action Summit right here in San Francisco. Meantime, China is making inroads into the electric car market. EVs only accounted for 1% of vehicle sales in 2017, but thanks to government intervention and car companies getting on board, that is about to quickly change. Bloomberg Quick Take explains what our electric future looks like and how fast we're going to get there.
It's been a long time since electric vehicles had anywhere near the market share of the internal combustion engine. Today, it's still not even close. In 2017, electrics made up 1% of worldwide auto sales, but governments have always had an outsized influence on the auto industry, possibly even more so than car companies. So get ready for a lot more electric vehicles. Since electric vehicles create about a third as much carbon as those running on gas, some countries like Norway, France, and the UK have already enacted deadlines to convert all new car sales to EVs. But China is making the biggest push, in part to tackle the air pollution choking its cities.
China is the biggest market for electric vehicles, and there are two programs in place. One is subsidies for consumers, which make them quite a bit more affordable. And there's also a system in place in China where automakers are required to make electric vehicles. They either have to make them or they can buy credits from companies that do.
Electric vehicles have come a long way. The Tesla Model 3 can travel as much as 310 miles on a full charge, which is only slightly less than the range of a traditional sedan.
A few years ago, buying an EV meant buying an electric car. And now there's ones you can buy it that are at a comparable cost to a mid-range vehicle.
EVs could be cheaper than internal combustion cars by 2025 thanks to falling battery prices. There are hurdles, like charging time. It takes 30 minutes just to recharge the Tesla so it can drive another 170 miles. Still, many are forging ahead. Volkswagen says it will spend $81 billion to develop electric versions of all of its models by 2030. And next year, Volvo will begin phasing out models that use only gas.
So most of the car companies that exist have already unveiled plans to make electric cars, at least all the biggest ones. They recognize the market shifting in this direction and they don't want to be left behind.
China bought 68% more cars in 2017 than the US did. Thanks to its size and growing wealth, if China can succeed in designing and manufacturing great electric vehicles, it could become the Detroit of the 21st century.
Coming up, starting a new business is tough, but former eBay COO and Yahoo chair Maynard Webb has successfully led several. Now he wants to share his expertise. Webb joins us here, coming up. And later this hour, the U.S. may have created artificial intelligence, but world-renowned AI expert Kai-Fu Lee says China is taking the lead. We'll discuss. This is Bloomberg. Gawker fans rejoice. According to Variety, the media gossip blog will be reborn early next year in a new iteration of the website. The launch comes under the ownership of Brian Goldberg, founder and CEO of Bustle Digital Group, who paid $1.35 million for the blog and its archives. The new Gawker is expected to build on the legacy of the beloved blog, beloved by some, which has been out of business for the last 2 years since being sued by investor Peter Thiel. Well, eBay COO, LiveOps CEO, Yahoo chairman, Maynard Webb is a 40-year veteran of the tech industry. He continues to serve on the boards of Visa and Salesforce, and today he's investing in the entrepreneurs of tomorrow through his Web Investment Network. But it is not just about giving them funding, also about giving them advice. In his latest book, Dear Founder, Webb shares more than 80 letters delivering words of wisdom to anyone who wants to start a business. He joins us now here in the studio to tell us more. It's so great to have you back here on the show.
It's so great to be here.
So, I mean, you've worked with some of the greatest. You've been mentored by some greats, and you've mentored others. Meg Whitman, Marissa Mayer, Mark Benioff. How does being an entrepreneur today and the advice that they need differ from when you started in this business for you?
It's way different. First of all, there's just not a boss that tells you what to do all day long. Today, we have to inspire people and motivate them and make sure that they can do all that they can do.
You talk in here about ego and how entrepreneurs can sometimes lose their way. How do you counsel entrepreneurs to make sure they don't get caught up in the wealth and the power and the arrogance, quite frankly, that can be Silicon Valley?
Well, I try to make sure we build values into a company from day one and teach how to be honest and transparent and humble. And the higher up you go in a company or in the world, the more you have an obligation to do better. And so I work really hard and try to select for founders that want coaching. Because it's not just our money. We care a lot about, you have seen our events. You know, we have 90 affiliates that invest by my side, and we want to bring an army to go help a company get better. But it's not so fun to give somebody money that doesn't want to have help.
Well, what's interesting about the way you invest is it's not just about giving them money. You also try to connect them with people that you think that they will be valuable based on your own network and the network that you've developed. What did you really want to accomplish here? I mean, do you think that founders aren't getting the advice they need, aren't getting straight talk?
Well, they might get straight talk, but I think what they aren't getting a lot is wisdom from the park bench, where you've spent a lot of years making things happen, and it's a lonely job. And I don't have an agenda. I'm just here to help founders get better. And so my son came up with this idea based on a Medium post he had seen about a dad dying and writing letters at certain stages of his life, and we were like, well, this is cool. We give advice all day long, but there's 90 or 100 CEOs for everyone we go give advice to. Is there a way to codify this? And then we did it for the network first with a small deal, and the network said, you got to give this to the world because there's advice that helps a lot.
So let's talk about some of the founders who are in the news. If you were writing a letter that started with, Dear Elon Musk, what would that letter say?
I would start it with, you're amazing, and you brought more innovation to the world than most people could ever dream about, and you need to keep being amazing, and you and your board should make sure that happens.
The media has been criticized for trivializing some of these headlines, and yet we're seeing him smoke marijuana in interviews. We're seeing him tweet nasty things. We're seeing him, share what seem to be untruths with the New York Times. How do you control someone like that?
I think you have to get him some advice. And
what about his board?
His board should be stepping up to work with him to make sure that it can never be just about the person running the company. You actually have an entity that's behind you, and all the company and the employees and shareholders are counting on the board and him to do the right thing for them.
What about Dear Mark Zuckerberg? What would that letter say?
It would be, I think Mark has come a long way. I met him when he first started the company. And, back then it was, can we even build anything that anybody cares about? And then, oh my God, we have to celebrate how far along they've come. But, every year, every new launch, the bar gets higher for what you're obligated to do. And the more people are using your product, the more responsibility you have to make sure it's done well. And I think he knows that there's more to do. And I would encourage him to do that as quickly as he can.
You worked really closely with Ms. Marissa Mayer as the chair of Yahoo. You navigated some very complex issues. What were some of the learnings there?
She's amazing. I mean, honestly, I loved partnering with her. And then I think it became a friendship as it went on. But it was hard. And she never, ever, ever backed down from trying to make everything work. But we had lots of hurdles to get over, and thank God we got them. We got it to the finish line and returned good shareholder value, and Altaba continues to do well.
I know you're really concerned about issues of diversity. You're working to bring diversity to your portfolio, but do you think she didn't get a fair shake from analysts and investors, and do you think that was because she's a woman?
I think, so I've worked I may be one of the few men in America that actually got to work with two outstanding women CEOs, Meg Whitman and Marissa Mayer, and I think they got treated differently, and neither of them would ever want to say that they did, but a side story, one time Marissa went to an event and had colored her hair, and I had a board member call up and said, why are you letting her do that? And I'm like, look, she has hair. I wish I did. So that's got nothing to do with how people dress, and what color they put on their hair is not what we're here to judge. So I don't think men would get some of the same stuff that she got.
So what would you say in a letter, on this topic of diversity that started with Dear Investors?
Well, I would say, dear investors, I would say we need to be encouraging way more diversity in CEOs we back, in minorities and in women and in good ideas. And we certainly need to make sure when we fund a company that we hold them accountable for actually hiring diversity from the beginning, because that's how you fix this, is you start early.
All right, Maynard Webb out with a new book today. Dear founder, some really poignant advice in here. So thank you so much for sharing it with us and with the world. Always good to have you here on the show, Maynard.
Love being here.
Still ahead, former Google China President Kai-Fu Lee says the search engine's return to the country will not be easy. He'll talk China tech, AI, and Google next. This is Bloomberg. Kai-Fu Lee may have been president of Google China back during its first run, but today he doesn't seem quite as confident about the search engine's return to the country. In his recent book, AI Superpowers, Lee, the CEO and chair of U.S. China tech fund Sinovation Ventures, underscores China's lead over the U.S. in new AI and technology. In a recent interview with Bloomberg's Tom McKenzie in Shanghai, he said it may be difficult for American companies like Google and Facebook to compete, to say the least. Take a listen.
I think Google would like to have its products everywhere, and not having China would obviously be missing a big piece. Having said that, coming back to China wouldn't be easy. We don't really see many examples of successful tech internet companies in China. Apple is probably the single example, but they're more of a hardware product. And similarly, we don't see the Chinese companies having much success in the US. I think we've developed to a point where China and US are really parallel universes. The entire stack of software that's on your phone in building a good app is totally different. So it just isn't easy for Tencent to build an app for the US or Google to build one for China.
So what would your advice be to Facebook or Google?
I think for an American company to try to outdo WeChat in social network or outdo Total in personalized news, that's going to be very tough. But there might be an American product that just doesn't exist in China that could be brought in. That would probably be the best approach. I would also suggest that if it's possible, the American giants could partner with a Chinese company. So one could imagine Tencent Search powered by Google, or a Baidu social product powered by Facebook. That one probably would be a little bit tough, but at least one could imagine that, because then you have a local partner who knows how to succeed in the market and also follow the regulations more precisely.
Would you imagine that they are having those discussions, Google and Facebook, about partnerships in China?
I would speculate that they are. Even when I was at Google, there were collaborations. Google actually did power Tencent Search for a period of time.
You have released a new book, AI Superpowers. Are we at an inflection point now in artificial intelligence, and particularly China's role in developing this space?
Yeah, I think China's had a lot of things building up to today. And I think it's the confluence of those factors that makes China a challenger and possibly equal to the US in terms of artificial intelligence. Those things are a set of phenomenal, hardworking, execution-oriented entrepreneurs, a lot of capital and smart VCs, and a lot of engineers and huge amounts of data. And that's probably the most important, because AI feeds on data. China has so much more data than the US. And lastly, very techno-utilitarian government policies.
We're getting to a point now where the developments in AI can be very quickly monetized. What are the potential opportunities of that shift?
Well, we're still at an early phase in the monetization of AI. The very clear area where AI can be monetized is in the internet space. And that's where we see Google, Amazon, Facebook, Tencent, Alibaba making tons of money using the data and then the accurate prediction, advertising, e-commerce, and so on. The next set of industries will be roughly in order: financial industry, retail industry, health and education, and then transportation. So I think over time, all of those will yield phenomenal profit. But the issue is selling AI to those traditional companies, whether it's banking or automotive, is a long sales cycle. One thing's for sure is that a traditional company that doesn't embrace AI is basically going to be out of luck, out of business.
Kai-Fu Lee there, author of a new book on AI. That does it for this edition of Bloomberg Technology. Do not miss our live coverage tomorrow from Cupertino of Apple's latest product announcements. Our special coverage begins 1 p.m. Eastern, 10 a.m. Pacific. We will bring you all the headlines as they happen. This is Bloomberg.